I'm Dr. Stacy Jagger, and Nashville is my hometown. My claim to fame is that back in the day, now I'm almost 52, I was the town drunks kid of Nashville. And in my own childhood, I was evicted 15 times by the time I left home at 16 years old. And much of my childhood, I was parked in front of a television. So I was raised with Let's Make a Deal, One Life to Live, General Hospital, the Jeffersons, All in the Family. Y'all can go back there with me. That was really, it was my electronic babysitter. So if you fast forward, in my early 20s, after I left a very difficult alcoholic home with a lot of domestic violence, I was newly married and had an opportunity to live in a totally off-the-grid cabin that had no electricity, no indoor plumbing, no running water. And for 18 months, I immersed myself into nature, creativity, and true authentic connection, movement, the way that I really was designed to live when I was a child, but then had that opportunity in my early 20s. So then you fast forward again, 15 years ago, I'm now in a clinical practice, working with children and families, with parents bringing me all of their kids, and I knew the one thing that I could do to inspire these families to really focus on healing was a digital detox. And that was 15 years ago when the phones were, iPads were so exciting, and I was trying to warn people of the downside of the overuse and misuse of screen time among children, with people looking at me like I had about 5 heads. I'm so internally grateful that this is now a mainstream conversation, as I have created a treatment protocol called the Mountain Method that is just recently was approved by NBCC, where I can train therapists, family therapists, in how to implement cyber trauma recovery principles into their practices. And I am grateful to sit here and share with you many stories of many children over the years that I have walked this process through, where kids absolutely hate me in the beginning of implementing a digital detox in their lives, but at the end are writing me thank you letters that they really got what they really wanted and needed. Kids cannot participate and feel a sense of true connection through a screen. AI is not a person, it's a keyboard. And so just educating children as well as parents over the years while implementing this treatment protocol has now inspired me to launch a personal brand called Dr. Sassy. My kid clients call me Dr. Sassy because I'm sassy. And I would love to speak with any of you that have a real heart and a passion for children and their mental health.
Anytime you engage with Dr. Jagger, she will talk about the digital detox. And I heard it enough that May, we did a digital detox in my house. And on the 31st, we're like, okay, it's 31 days. I have a 9-year-old and a 4-year-old. And I said to my 4-year-old, what do you want to watch now? And he's like, I don't. Let's go outside and play. And I was like, oh, okay. I also learned that the device wasn't their choice. It was mine. And many times I had work to do and things to do, and I offered it to them. So that there were a lot of revelations in our house, so thank you for that. My 9-year-old, though, has joyfully taken back her shows, but the 4-year-old didn't need it. I want to talk more about your day-to-day in your practice. What are you seeing? What are you hearing from families? And what turns you on to really seeing this common thread that we're talking about today?
I work now, because my practice is in Brentwood, primarily with leaders, executives, and their spouses and children. And the funny thing about screens is that when you inspire a family to remove the overuse, misuse of screen time for about a month, there is a process that is just kind of like rinse and repeat. And it doesn't really matter, there's some kids that are coming to me because they've been introduced to pornography and all kinds of violence. It's creating nervous system dysregulation issues in them. But even just the overuse of positive screens, when you remove them for about a month, the first 5 days are extremely difficult. I call them 5 days of hell. Day 6 and 7, I call the door of boredom. That's when kids think boredom is going to kill them, but boredom does not kill children. It's really necessary for their creativity to kick in. The next 3 weeks after that, I simply coach parents to replace screen time for connection. And I have tons of activities that I call Sassy Play, and I can do one with you really quick that's super fun. I'm going to be Yeti, and you're going to be Spaghetti. And this is just a very quick connection exercise you can do with kids. I'm going to use different voices saying Yeti. You're going to say Spaghetti. Here we go. Yeti.
Spaghetti.
Yeti.
Spaghetti.
Yeti.
Spaghetti.
Yeti.
Spaghetti.
Yeti, 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 yeti.
Spaghetti, spaghetti, spaghetti.
So in about 15 seconds, I created playful connection with you. And a lot of families just don't have the resources to be able to remove screens and to interject back that connection that kids are really needing and wanting and desiring. So in that process, the mountain method, what happens with kids is whatever is going on with a child during a digital detox, it will just bubble to the surface with the whole family, and I'm able to help them resolve it in a very rapid results way because parents are so ready for change in their family system.
What I'm seeing in my clinic is the impact on two main aspects of health, physical health and mental health. An average teenager spends over 4 hours a day of leisurely screen time. And we know that spending more than 4 hours a day of leisurely screen time doubles the odds of anxiety and depression. Over the last 2 decades, the rate of death by suicide has increased by 30%, and overuse of social media and excessive consumption of online content is one of the biggest drivers. How does that play out in my clinic? Allison is a 15-year-old young lady. She is consumed by her social media feed telling her what she should eat in a day, how to look her thinnest best, and how to be desirable. Impressionable young Allison fell for the trap, and she has now developed eating disorder, anxiety, and depression. Grace is 12. Over this last Thanksgiving break, she swallowed 100 pills of Advil in an unfortunate attempt to end her life. That was 3 a.m. Right after she did that, she was scared, and you know who she turned to? She turned to her companion AI to ask what she should do next. Her parents were in the room next to her. She did not wake her parents up. In the days that followed, her mother looked at Grace's social media feed to find content that was so dark and depressing that even her mother could not continue to scroll. That is the impact on the mental health: anxiety, depression, suicide, loneliness. What about physical health? We as a community have become addicted to dopamine. And we get dopamine from two major sources. Number one, processed food. Number two, screens. Given the context of today's conversation, let's talk about how does screen have anything to do with dopamine and what does that do? Excessive consumption of screen reduces physical activity, increases sedentary time, bedtime snacking, and when we are eating while we are watching screens, we do not register fullness, satiety. So we subconsciously continue to consume more. But you know what the biggest issue is? When we continue to consume screens, our threshold for pleasure goes up. We do not find the same content interesting enough. We need something else to get a higher level of kick. Content developers know how our brain works. So they develop content that is violent, novel, malicious, adventurous, and sexual. That is what keeps the users hooked for more. When we get used to that pleasure, then what else does the brain turn to get the same or higher level of kick? Food. High sugar, high fat, calorie-dense, ultra-processed food. Over the last 30 years, the prevalence of obesity in male adolescents has increased by 130%, and in female adolescents by 160%. What is driving these trends? Our addiction as a community to dopamine that we are getting in plenty from food and screens. That's what I'm seeing in my clinic, and this is not sustainable.
So we are hearing some of the things we're seeing here in our community. I'm a parent. It is hard to have these conversations in isolation in our home because I feel that I have locked down the iPads and I'm monitoring the things, but my children leave the house. They go on play dates. They go to school where they have one-to-one devices. How can we have conversations outside of our home? Maybe the conversations with our children. I'm also curious, they're also mothers, so share as the mother lens. What do we do? What are some options and how do we start those conversations?
I have 2 children. My daughter is 11, going into 6th grade, and my son is 6, going into 1st grade. Over the last 2 years, not just because of the work that I do in digital wellness, but as a mother, I have created a community of like-minded parents in my own children's school. From kindergarten through rising 6th grade, I have a separate text group for each grade of parents who feel comfortable raising their children without a smartphone at least until the end of 8th grade. Building a community is the only way to keep going with the way current situation is, so that your child is not the only one without social media, so that your child is not the only one without a phone. Now, I'm all about collective action. I'm all about building community around a mission. But at some point, we have to make individual choices. Nobody is coming to save us as parents. If we continue to rely on big tech and social media platforms to change their addictive designs, it is not going to help. In all of this conversation, if we could replace the word screen time with cigarettes, if we could replace the word social media with drugs, if that makes us uncomfortable, this conversation is worth paying attention.
So I'm a mother of 4, and my husband and I, he's here with us, we are a homeschooling family, except my 4th kid, we are too tired to homeschool. So he is in a public school now, and you know, the homeschooling environment I find to be more just screen lighter in general. I found the homeschooling community to be a little more intentional around this topic. But because we are now a public school family with our son who just finished the 4th grade, it just requires a lot of intentionality and conversation with him. Because we only have one screen in our home, and we've been very intentional about not having screens in our bedrooms, my son is able to have a lot of self-leadership around what is okay and not okay for him. And I think because the culture of our home is very screen light, that my son has been able to advocate for himself in many ways, and having open conversations with him about, you know, what's okay, what's not okay. He does have a little Gab watch where we can, you know, which is do y'all know what a Gab watch is? It's a dumb watch. It's not a smart watch, it's a dumb watch. But we can keep up with him and he can text us. But we've kind of come up with a graduated system of what we believe is helpful for children. We start with a Gab watch, which is a dumb watch, and then we go to a Bark phone, and then we don't do anything with smartphones until our kids are at least in high school.
The anxious generation, his recommendation based on research, there's a phrase, wait till 8th, maybe end of 8th grade, but if you can get with your community and have those collective conversations of saying, we will all agree not to give our children cell phones till after 8th grade. I didn't believe my daughter in kindergarten when she said one of her friends had an iPhone. And I thought, well, you know, she's 5. They tell narratives. Until there was a play date and there were 5 girls all on the ground watching YouTube videos on an iPhone, 5-year-olds. So anyone's choice to give their child an iPhone affects everyone. I'm also trying to say this to the grandmothers. Our grandparents want to spoil and give the iPhones.
I will say that Dr. William Sears, who is, do y'all know who that is a worldwide wonderful pediatrician that wrote the foreword to my book, 30-Day Blackout. In his own home, he has a basket, and we have done this in our own home, that just says, welcome to the fun house, place your phones here. And it just gives the message to the people that are coming to the home that this is a screen-free environment for your children to be a child. And, you know, if you don't have parental controls on your children's devices and have cleaned up the screens in your home, the things that children are finding very innocently is just not okay. And a big reason why these ladies and I have become friends is because we have a similar heart for children that are finding things on iPads, iPhones, and their home-based screens that, you know, no child will say to you, I couldn't wait to go back to that day that I was exposed to porn at 10 years old. Like, that's just not something that they're ever going to say. And yet the statistics, and this young lady here can spout out the statistics way better than I can. But the statistics are staggering of how many children and adolescents are in their rooms, you know, really being kidnapped in a white van, except they're in your home being kidnapped by total strangers, having conversations with adults that are pretending to be teenagers. And it is not until someone in a clinical field is involved in your family to say to you, this is what's happening under your own roof. And we are here really not to scare anybody, but just sound the alarm that it is time to turn this ship around and do what's right on behalf of kids and adolescents today.
Speaking of scary statistics, a Common Sense Media survey of 1,400 children showed that about 53% had accessed pornography before the age of 13. 1/3 of these children reported accessing it for the first time on a school-issued laptop. So it's not just, we can protect, as parents, we can protect our children as much as we want in our homes, but what happens outside of home is not in our control unless the entire community comes together. Now we're talking about severe cases of anxiety, severe cases of depression, access to pornography, and cyberbullying. All of these cases do not begin as extreme situations. They all begin with very familiar, intentional choices that we all make as parents every single day. What are those choices? Well, he needs a phone because we need to keep track of him after school. He socializes with his friends on social media. She feels left out if she's the only one without social media. They all need to learn how to grow up in this environment. They need to learn how to use tech responsibly. There is no judgment in these choices. These are all fairly familiar, well-loving, intentional choices that we all make as parents every single day, yet the extreme cases begin with these choices. So it's important for us to educate ourselves about these choices, about the alternatives that we have to keep track of our children, to be able to communicate with them, to be able to make them not feel left out without giving them 24/7 access to the World Wide Web. When we were little, we grew up fearing the physical dangers of the world: kidnapping, accidents, drowning, rape. We did not grow up fearing the online dangers of the world. We did not experience during our teenage years cyberbullying, sexting, sextortions, predators, catfish online. So our brain, our mind naturally prioritized protecting our children from the physical dangers of the world, and in that process, we unintentionally expose them to the dangers of the online world. The physical world is in fact a much safer place now than it was 25 years ago, even though social media feeds and the media in general does not let us believe so. So we've got to stop projecting our own anxieties onto our children, and in that process, arm them with these devices that we think will keep them safe. They will not keep them safe.
I knew Hyatt had written that book specifically for me when I had read this paragraph saying, when you drive down the street and you see a child in their yard, are you looking for their parents? And I caught myself driving my daughter to school, and I saw a little boy playing ball in his fenced-in yard in Sylvan Park neighborhood, And my brain immediately went to, where's that adult? And we learn, and I grew up, we ran the neighborhood and we went to the park and our parents didn't know where we were. But we have become a generation of parents that are overprotected because my brain's immediately going, well, what if the ball goes over the fence and he's going to get hit by a car? And what if someone bad drives? You know, we just start spiraling and we learn the real danger that is probable and is happening here in our communities are those screen devices that we hand them. So in my research that I've been able to consume and learn from experts here and help share, it starts with adults. And I have an iPhone, and I enjoy my iPhone. So I was going to ask the question, what should you look for in children? But I also want to ask, what should we look for in ourselves? How do we know that we may have an addiction to our screens and phones? What should we look for?
So over the last 6 years of doing this work in digital wellness, I have learned one thing. Screen time is no longer just a kid problem. It is a human problem. It's one of those things that unless we as adults repair our fractured relationship with technology, we cannot expect the next generation to do any better. And I explore those concepts in detail in my book, Calm the Noise, why adults must escape digital addiction to save the next generation. And I have a few copies of that book here if you would like to get some. Now, in terms of what are the signs of addiction to cell phone, there are a few different things to think about. Number one, use in dangerous situations. The similarities between substance abuse and similarities between cell phone abuse, okay? Number one, use in dangerous situations. Someone who might have substance use disorder tends to use it in dangerous situations. Someone who might have cell phone use addiction might tend to use it in dangerous situations such as driving, distracted driving. Number two, social and interpersonal problems are very common when it comes to substance abuse. Social, interpersonal problems and family confrontations have become increasingly common when it comes to smartphone use. Think about the hours spent in the toilet doom scrolling, the excessive gaming and excessive shopping. Number three, abandonment of usual activities. Someone who struggles with substance use, their whole entire attention is focused on getting the substance, using it, recovering from the effect of the substance, and then figuring out where to get the substance again. Someone who has problems with cell phone use often tends to abandon the usual activities because everything else is boring. Last, withdrawal symptoms. We know what withdrawal symptoms look like when it comes to substance use. What do withdrawal symptoms look like when we are unable to use our cell phone and do not have 24/7 access to our cell phones? Anxiety, irritability, uneasiness. We are not comfortable leaving our phone aside. We are not comfortable cutting the cord with our phones even for a few minutes. So now, from almost 30 to 35 years of research in psychology, psychiatry, and addiction medicine, we now know that the similarities between substance abuse addiction and cell phone addiction are undeniable.
I like to focus on the solution. And when you return a child to their natural organic environment, which is creativity, nature, movement, and connection, a lot of their behavioral issues just naturally, organically will go away on their own. What you're left with is what really needs to be resolved. And with the parents of these children, I think Methuselah was like 800 and something years old when he died. So I think we're all a bunch of kids at this point. So if you can really treat yourself like an adult kid, and what does the child inside of you need? Well, you probably need to go to the playground and climb a tree, like getting back to what life is all about. My kid just went to Ireland this summer, and I'm like, what happened? What? She's in Ireland, really? And when I think about, even a screen light family of how quickly our children are raised, we have 12 years to be a kid. When you turn 13, you are no longer a child. You are individuating to become an adult. And so really being mindful of what kids are here for and how little time they have to be a child. As a clinical therapist, when I'm working with adults, what are they telling me? You know, what happened when they were 10, when they were 8, when they were 6? What do they want to go back to? It's not their favorite day of General Hospital. You know, I wish I could go back to that day of sitting at the creek with my dad or playing the guitar with him or climbing a tree. They want to go back to real life. These screens are not satisfying. They're useful. I'm so grateful for GPS. I used to get those maps out and be like, I don't know where I'm at. Like, which way's north? So I'm so thankful for the resource, but it has to be put in its proper place. And for my practice, the Griffin router, Gryphon, is extremely helpful. The Opal app, OPAL, that app, and the Freedom app, those 3 things alone will start to clean up your screens and give you limits. Where it's just like you only get, 1,500 or 2,000 calories today. Well, you only get X amount of minutes on your phone, and it just makes it easier to live life.
I had someone share this with me, and it's really interesting sort of data point of, we grew up with commercials. We got used to them, but then you bought a Netflix subscription and you didn't have commercials anymore, and we got really excited about that. Well, now they have commercials back. And when it goes to commercial, do you reach for your phone? When you're out at date night and your significant other goes to the bathroom, do you pick up the phone? And I caught myself doing that. It was really awkward to just sit there at a restaurant alone, and I'm like, oh, I think I will survive 4 minutes in isolation. So as we wrap up here, I want you to each share, maybe in 1 minute, one thing you want this audience to know, what they can do, solutions. What do you want to leave them with before we open it up for questions?
Solutions are broad. In my book, I describe the 4 foundational steps of digital wellness. Number 1 is to turn off non-essential notifications on your devices, the badges, the banners, the dings, the buzzes, the chimes. Turn off the notifications, calm the noise. Number 2, physically separating ourselves from our devices for about 60 to 90 minutes every day while awake. Cutting the cord. It is not easy to do so if we are not in the habit of this practice, but it gets better. So physically separating ourselves from our devices for 60 to 90 minutes every day. Number 3, deleting time-consuming applications from the phones and browsers if needed. What are time-consuming applications? Social media, gaming, streaming channels. You're welcome to still access social media on a desktop or a computer. The apps are designed to be extra addictive and are always available to pull us into a world of virtual reality, helping us escape from the reality of the real world. So let's go ahead and delete those time-consuming applications and browsers from the phone. Number 4, embrace boredom. That's where curiosity and creativity thrive. Eventually, what is the purpose of all of this? It is to learn how to use technology as tool, not as trap. When we start using technology as escape from boredom, stress, and anxiety, when we start using technology for 24/7 source of distraction and entertainment, that's when it becomes addictive. So learning how to use technology as a tool where technology enriches us and does not engulf us, where every moment counts and where connections are made in real life, not just online.
I want to close by reminding us that this conversation is not about fear, it's about our responsibility. Children should not have to carry the burden of resisting technology that was intentionally designed to hold their attention. Families should not have to solve this alone at the kitchen table, and schools should not have to absorb the mental health cost without community support. Caregivers should not have to whisper their concerns because they're afraid of being seen as dramatic, old-fashioned, or overprotective. The truth is, speaking up is how norms change. I got introduced to Alice Rowley after I shared that my daughter had accessed inappropriate content on a school computer. And she said to me, well, then let's make a change. And I didn't know what that meant, but it meant speaking up, working to change laws, and the incredible moms, including Alice, were able to pass legislation this year to make school computers safer in Tennessee. We've got more work to do. We've learned a lot, but it was hard. A few years ago, many people felt uncomfortable questioning smartphones. We've removed smartphones to a degree at school, but they still have computers that sit on their desks, one-to-one devices. There's more things to be done to keep our children safe from predators and other activities. Ed tech's a whole other issue we could talk about on another day. But now physicians, psychologists, educators, researchers, lawmakers, and parents are saying the same thing. It's time to do something. And you in this room, what can you do? This is an invitation to start a conversation, ask questions, create a healthier boundary for yourself. Talk to other parents, support phone-free spaces. Freedom Foundation just worked with, what restaurant? The Pharmacy Burger, and they hosted an evening at the restaurant where no phones were allowed. And if you made it all the way through dinner, you got free ice cream?
Free ice cream.
Really cool and clever, really exciting. We need to make that the norm. They also had little activity kits for the kids.
Yes, we brought some pouches for people to put their phones aside, and we're kind of running out of time. There was one couple where the guy was on board, but the girl was not on board. The guy managed to convince her not just to put her phone in the pouch, but also her smartwatch, and they were there for 3 hours just chit-chatting. That was probably one of the best evenings of their life. That's my assumption. I don't know.
Yeah. Well, I know you have questions, and I know they have answers, so let's open it up for Q&A.
Yeah, great. All right, I'll just make a couple of comments for the questions. What an incredibly important conversation. If you made it through this whole discussion and you didn't look at your smartphone, go get a second dessert on your way out. So, but if you're a member of our club and have a question, please keep your questions concise. We've just got about 10 minutes, and so we'll get through as many as we can. Tell us who you are, and thank you all very much. Let's have some questions.
Hi, Sunny Bray, Catalyst Collective. I want to thank Elle Benson for having the forethought and having this conversation. I know she is very deeply passionate about this topic. I just have a question, right? This is Gen Alpha, right? This is a different generation. They are growing up with screens. They're growing up with things that we didn't have, just because that's the generation that we are in regards to technology. I actually just had this conversation with my husband over the weekend. We took our child to Chattanooga to the museum there. I'm sorry, Leah and Joel, but we had a great time. And the conversation that we had was, my husband said, I don't want her to be the first and I don't want her to be the last. And, I said to him, I said, well, her well-being, her confidence, her insecurity, her safety is more important to me than anything else. However, what do we do when our children are being sent home with devices, right? My 5-year-old was sent home with a laptop, and there was a part of me that was genuinely impressed that my 5-year-old knew how to use a laptop better than her grandparent. But I know that all these things sound great in theory, right? Outside time, boredom, all those things, that they're well. But I just generation. So what?
Yes, we are in a different generation. We are raising digital natives while we are digital immigrants. Now, as far as school issue devices are concerned, we'll be here all afternoon. So I'll try to abbreviate that answer a little bit. There is a distinction that is very important for us as parents, community members, and school leaders to understand. And that is the distinction between digital literacy and digital dependency. Digital literacy is teaching kids how to type, how to research responsibly online. AI literacy, how to use the digital tools, AI tools responsibly to uplift their academics. That is digital literacy. Digital dependency is when technology overflows into the core academic classrooms where science, math, English, and social studies are taught through educational technology platforms, which are neither safe nor effective. So unless we make the distinction between teaching our kids how to grow up in the digital world versus planting them in front of their screens, boiling their entire childhood down to screens, unless we make that distinction, we would not be able to get a good, clear vision of where do we go from here.
There's also a direct correlation between children's sense of self and their inner sense of peace with connection. And in order for a child to feel connection, they have to see it, hear it, taste it, touch it, feel it. So I went to the creek, I felt, the water on my feet. I was with my friend. We were singing together. That kind of holistic, whole body experience. A child cannot get their true connection needs met through a phone or an iPad. And so educating them of how important it is for their brains and their bodies to be in real life and balancing that with their digital life, and you can start to help them to empower themselves of understanding their autonomic nervous system, the sympathetic and parasympathetic branch, and there's all kinds of ways for children to understand why it's so important for their nervous systems to be regulated, which requires, what I've said over and over again, which is being in nature where the sun is on your face and you're exercising, that you have pure water, you're going for walks, you have connection eyeball to eyeball with other human beings, and using tech as an add to your life rather than a dessert to your life rather than it being the main course.
And my short answer is, rather than because I said so, it's because I love you. So there are times in which she can't access things her friends can access.
Thank you. My name is Waverly Ann Harris with Friends Life Community and with a 3-year-old. And I think you're touching on this, but I'm really curious, especially with somebody who's so young, more about the, philosophy and science behind addiction, because I see my kid's only been exposed to TV, but I see how much that has impressed upon him and is addictive. And so I think I'm just curious in better understanding. I think what I've heard is that you don't want to limit everything because that increases the need and the desire. But talking about limiting dependency, my addicted husband has tried to go to a dumb phone, and everything society has created a dependency on the devices. So I just would love your advice on how it feels like it's an all or nothing, but I don't think that's possible either.
I'll just say really quickly, and then you can go for it. In the back of my book, 30-Day Blackout, are a list of shows that you can find on Netflix so that when you need to take a shower and you've got a 3-year-old and you're tired, Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood is all right there. Little House on the Prairie, like those slow screen time shows. Mr. Rogers was brilliant. You went down the street and then you took a left and then he opened the door and then he got his coat out and then he showed you his fish and then he sang you a song. That's a very different experience for a 3-year-old than the types of shows that are out today where the frames per second alone are creating such ADHD type qualities in a child that doesn't actually have ADHD. But by the time you watch those kinds of shows for hours on end and turn it off, you have hyper focused on those shows and now you've turned it off and the child can't focus on anything. And then all of a sudden they have ADHD. So you might want to look into slow screen time shows that are appropriate for a 3-year-old, and most of those are old school shows that, where Fred Rogers, quite honestly, was brilliant, and there are others as well.
Common Sense Media is a great resource, and long form, so watching a movie together is better than Cocomelon. And so Common Sense Media will help direct you in that and having those conversations. There is nothing wrong with a family movie night. Do it. It's great.
Now, where do the screen time limitation guidelines come from? Why do we say delay the smartphone and social media at least until age 16 years? And there is science behind that. Prefrontal cortex, which is part of the brain that helps with executive functioning control, is only about 50% formed by the time an individual is 18, and almost fully formed by mid-20s in most people. So executive functioning skills are self-control, emotional regulation, motivation, task initiation. Constant exposure to screens and notifications and alerts, the younger the child is, the more the damage. The constant exposures to all of this does not let the prefrontal cortex develop. It impairs the formation of the structure and the function of prefrontal cortex. So expecting a 13-year-old child to be able to get off their video games, to be able to get off their social media feeds, is not neurologically possible because they don't even have the right brain parts to be able to do that. They do not have the skills and the right mindset, the prefrontal cortex, that can help them resist the technology that is designed to be addictive. It is made by people who know exactly how neuroscience works.
Last question. It feels like Travis Claybrooks Rafal Institute. Can you talk about the intersection of screens and increased mortality? Primarily screen use as a driver of loneliness, which we understand is the equivalent of smoking 15 cigarettes a day, as well as screens and how they contribute to increased gun violence, to dealing with conflict that happens on social media. We know that gun violence is the #1 cause of death in children under 18.
So I can speak to let's begin by talking about the loneliness part. We feel that we are connected. We have never been more connected than ever before, but the paradox is we have never been more disconnected than ever before. We are in a relationship with our technology, a deep, passionate, intimate, codependent relationship with a piece of metal and plastic. And along the way, we might have let go of real live human connectedness. That then leads to loneliness and everything else that you outlined better than I could have. About gun violence, I do not believe I have stats for that yet. I wonder if Elle and Stacy, if you have something to say.
Do you have gun violence?
I was just going to say that the remedy to disconnection is connection. The remedy to all of this is connection. And so if you can remind yourself that the violence and all the issues that we're talking about, when you feel seen, heard, celebrated, and delighted in, there's not a lot of behavioral issues going along with feeling that way.
Yeah, within happiness research, the longest running study on happiness out of the University of Harvard is 85 years in running, and they track individuals from 18 years to end of age, and they have thousands of participants, and one of the biggest markers in that research project is they can determine someone's health at 80 specifically by their marriage at the age of 50. So if they have a marriage or a relationship that is as close and connected as one single individual, that's your ride or die, you call when you get arrested, and that person who knows you so intimately, you will live a longer life. So it's not just like happy wife, happy life. It is happy wife, longer life. Like you will live longer because that loneliness is deteriorating our health, and it's a real issue in aging adults. I think we're getting cut off here, but thank you so much. Let's give them a round of applause.